My dearest earthlings, it's so good to share with you the next part of my story. If you haven't heard the first part, you may not know me. I am the universe. I am everything. Really, everything. I am all the gleaming galaxies, the whole earth, every rock, every flea on every cat. You don't have to look far to find me, because I am you too. You have always been part of me. In a first parish service 6 years ago, I told you how I was born with a bang more than 13 billion years ago. I started out as nothing but a tiny speck with a wild and dazzling dream. Over a long time, I turned into zillions of galaxies. At the end of the first part of my story, your planet Earth had just been born. So settle in, and I'll tell you how rivers of lava turned into rowdy reptiles and flashy flowers. But first, a word from our sponsors.
Good morning. Welcome to the First Parish in Bedford. Welcome if this is your first time here, or if you've been here 10 times, or 100 times, or 1,000 times. We're so happy that you're here today. Here at First Parish, we celebrate diversity of many different kinds, and we celebrate nonconformity and the things that make us different and creative. We're a Unitarian Universalist congregation, which means we're united more by our shared values than by any creed or dogma. Those shared values include respect, compassion, justice, peace, and environmental stewardship. Today, we're in for a very special lay-led service designed and led by Janet Powers. First Parish has a long history of wonderful lay-led services, and if you're interested in creating your own service, please talk to Megan when she gets back. You should have been given a timeline today, and you can follow along on your timeline. Following the service, please join us in the common room for coffee, and stop by the welcome table if you'd like to learn more about us. In the back of your order of service, there are some announcements. I'd like to draw your attention to the Pete Seeger Memorial Service from 4 to 6 p.m. today, sponsored by the Social Responsibility Council and coordinated by Ron Green. There will be music, singing, and remembrances. A reception will follow. And now, please stand as you are able and join me in the words of our unison affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Please be seated. Years ago, Michael Dowd and Connie Barlow came to First Parish sharing their love for and enthusiasm of the great story, the history of the universe, as told as the most basic of sacred stories. They were careful to remind us that this is the story of the changing story. It continually evolves as we learn more about our world. Also, they emphasized that this story is not over yet. Who knows what will come next? We hope you'll listen to our story with a curious mind and an open belief bag. Thank you.
Imagine a time 5 billion years ago, inside a huge spinning disk of dust. Earth began as a pint-sized planetary pup warmed by the sun. But she couldn't stay small. For millions of years, meteors crashed into Earth. Each one made her grow bigger and hotter. Please stand as you are able and sing along. A shooting star is not a star. The kids will sing it once through for you, and the words are in your order of service. Shooting star is not a star, it's not a star at all. A shooting star's a meteor that's headed for a fall. A shooting star, a meteor, whichever way you fly. The moment that it comes to Earth, it becomes a meteor. A shooting star is not a star, it's not a star at all. A shooting star's a meteor that's headed for a fall. A shooting star, a meteor, whichever way you like. The moment that it hits the earth, it becomes a meteorite. Shooting star is not a star, not a star at all. A shooting star's a meteor that's headed for a fall. A shooting star, a meteor, whichever way you like. The moment that it hits the earth, it becomes a meteorite. The earth began to melt and turn herself inside out, over and over. Her sizzling red lava spewed into vast, glowing seas.
Excuse me, Ms. Universe. There is something I would like to add. There's something I'd like to add.
Go ahead.
Well, thank you.
Perhaps Professor Stats.
Early in Earth's history, about 4.5 billion years ago, and feel free to refer to what you have in your hands, there was a Mars-sized planetesimal, now named Theia, vying for the same place in our solar system as Earth was. Eventually, they collided, and because Earth was bigger, it won out. The heavy metals of both fused with the Earth's core, creating a more massive Earth. The lighter stuff blasted back out to Earth's orbit, where it quickly clumped and coalesced, forming into our moon just a few years later. It was believed that the moon was formed only 15,000 miles away from Earth. Today, it's about 239,000 miles away. We imagine that this yoga ball here is the moon, and the Earth up there is the Earth. When it started out, it would have been right around here. But today, it would be somewhere out past where Old Town Hall is.
Meteors and such finally stopped bombing Earth. She cooled and her crust hardened. Steam clouds cooled too and condensed into drops of water. It was a glorious moment when the great rain began. It poured for millions of years until oceans covered your Earth. Molten red rocks pushed up through cracks in the ocean floor. Lightning bolts zapped the seas. Rock, water, and air crunched and crashed. Bits of carbon made inside of stars, hooked together into long chains that folded and looped into tiny, slippery bubbles. And then the most amazing thing happened. The teensy bubbles began to twist and turn, not only when waves crashed or lightning flashed, but on their own. Earth was alive. That ancient living stew brought forth the very first earthlings. They were bacteria. From the start, about 4 billion years ago, bacteria were hungry. Their food was hydrogen. Bacteria ate it right out of gas bubbles gurgling up from the cracks in the ocean floor. The ones who couldn't eat hydrogen perished. Those who could lived and split apart into more bacteria. They passed on their special knowledge through invisible chains of carbon called DNA. Yes, Professor Stats.
Well,
is there something you want to add?
Since we are celebrating Darwin's 215th birthday right around now, I thought it would be good to mention something about evolution, or rather, coevolution. This new life, bacteria, is the beginning of biological evolution. But we now understand that the geological world changed and morphed right along with life. Did you know that when the Earth first formed, there were probably only about a dozen different minerals? Today, there are more than 4,500. This didn't just happen by magic. In fact, it seems life directly affected the creation of most of Earth's minerals. From the very beginning, all things have been changing and rearranging, linking and affecting one another and adapting through time. Just like our seventh principle says, to all things we truly are connected.
Everywhere, mounds of bacteria, cities really, rose in shallow ocean waters. Bacteria on top ate rays of light and magically transformed sun energy into food. What wizards they were! Hungry bacteria fanned out through the seas and even on land in search of new hydrogen hunting grounds. Then they discovered that hydrogen was all around them. Water is made out of hydrogen and oxygen, H2O. The sunlight-eating wizards used sun energy to pry hydrogen away from oxygen and water. Then they gobbled up the hydrogen. Their H2O-busting technology turned Earth's oceans into a resource bonanza. But their discovery had a dark side. Once free, oxygen was a deadly poison to bacteria. As bacteria busily busted apart H2O, oxygen gas whooshed into the oceans and eventually into Earth's atmosphere. The bacteria wizards created their own pollution crisis. Bacteria began to die. Earth was sick. She was in the midst of her first great extinction. Was Earth going to die?
It took millions of years for the oxygen to actually accumulate and be released into the atmosphere. The crisis for the bacteria in the water peaked about 2.5 billion years ago. During this time, the released oxygen was trapped in the oceans and sea bedrock. It wasn't until much later that there was oxygen in our atmosphere. Up until then, there was virtually no oxygen in the atmosphere.
And then things got worse. Hungry bacteria began to eat each other. I realized a whole new kind of life had just come into being. They were life eaters. Of all this mayhem, about 2 billion years ago, something incredible happened. Two battling bacteria tried to turn each other into a liquefied lunch, but instead they merged into a new earthling, a eukaryote. Meanwhile, poisonous oxygen clouds kept closing in. Eukaryotes had many talents, but coping with oxygen was not one of them. Earth's disaster was turning into a mega disaster. Something had to happen. Earth's oceans were filled with zillions of dying eukaryotes and bacteria. Then, a whippersnapper of a bacteria turned oxygen poison into power. Who were these tiny powerhouses? Mitochondria. First, eukaryotes and mitochondria were fierce enemies, always turning each other into delectable gooey meals. Then, something very strange happened. To escape predators, mitochondria hid inside eukaryotes. They mopped up the oxygen poison and made energy for both of them. In exchange, eukaryotes protected mitochondria from predators. Now that's an awesome partnership. Mitochondria, once free-living bacteria, live inside all plants and animals, even you. Every second, your mitochondria engines are burning oxygen to power you. It's true. Bacteria created your oxygen atmosphere, and they breathe oxygen for you. Do you see why I love them so much? Life mixed and morphed in the soupy, salty sea. At first, eukaryotes reproduced themselves the way bacteria do. They just split apart and kept on rolling. ugly eukaryotes paired off and fused into one entirely new being. It was just the beginning of sexual reproduction. It meant that the new eukaryotes looked or behaved a little differently from either parent cell. Those eukaryotes were a social bunch. Most discovered it was easier to live in teams or colonies rather than alone.
Hey, that's just like us. We're a team too. We find it better to work together than alone. And that's why we're now going to collect the offering.
Where were we? Oh, yes. Those social eukaryotes were team players. About 700 million years ago, some teams began to look like large, thick fingerprints slowly sliding over rocks and sand. All of them had soft, mushy bodies. Inside each colony, every eukaryote had a special job. Some took in food, others handled garbage patrol. Oh, how I marveled at their incredible teamwork. Some brand new colonies became the very first animals. And then, wow! Earth's animal population began to explode and to morph into dazzling body designs. Squishy jellyfish twitched their long, stringy tentacles and developed the very first muscles. Trilobites led the way in making hard things like a skeleton shield. That's not all. They invented the very first eyes made out of clear crystals. Wiggly worms began to build the beginnings of brains and backbones. Guess what? They really were our ancestors. So please stand as you are able and sing with us. You are us. We are you. The words are in your order of service, and the tune is Knick-Knack, Paddywhack. We'll sing it just once.
You are us. We are you.
We are all bacteria too, with the knick-knack, paddywhack. Give them brains and bones, everything, even evolves and morphs. You are us, we are you. We are all one family too. With a knick-knack, paddywhack, give 'em brains and bones. Everything evolves and morphs. You are us, we are you. We keep changing till we're new. With a knick-knack, paddywhack, give 'em brains and bones. Who knows what we'll morph to next? Everywhere, brand new animals were beginning to move, to see, and to think in more and more complicated ways. It was very exciting. About 500 million years ago, as ocean tides went out each day, two different groups of eukaryotes got stuck on shore. One eukaryote group ate sunlight, the other ate soil. They found each other and they became the very first plants and fungi. You might say they fell in love because you always find them together, trading sun and earth energy. Their marriage changed Earth forever. Moss and giant ferns began to spread with their fungi partners underground. Animals with hard outside came out of the sea and took to the air. They became insects. Gargantuan dragonflies with wingspans as wide as seagulls zigzagged along the shore.
O2 levels at this time were a soaring 30%. Today, we are just over 20%. Some scientists believe this is what enabled such large bugs to fly.
Somehow, a few fish turned their fins into stubby web-like feet. The lure of land was so great that their fish gills began to change into air-breathing lungs. It took millions of years for land and water to shape your ancestors into an entirely new kind of animal that lived both on land and in water. But it happened. They were amphibians. Your amphibian ancestors had to lay their eggs in water. A brand new egg appeared on land. It had a leathery shell so the embryo wouldn't dry out. Who laid these extra strength, highly fortified eggs? Reptiles. Now they could explore the continents. Meanwhile, the continents were slowly moving about. They were separate for a long time. Then they slid toward each other and collided into one giant landmass called Pangea. Reptiles easily spread everywhere. Before long, they tried out new crawling techniques. Lizards splayed out their legs to the side, twisted their bodies as they crawled over rocks. Two groups of reptiles grew legs that went straight down below their bodies. At first, both groups were pretty similar, but little changes. A slight change in skull design here, an adjustment in tooth design there, eventually led to huge differences. One group of reptiles turned into raucous rulers. They were dinosaurs. other group of reptiles turned into fuzzy, mousy animals, less than 5 inches long. They were mammals. Some were destined to be your great, a million times great-grandparents. For 150 million years, the dazzling dinosaurs hardly noticed them scurrying about underfoot and nursing their young under bushes. Some dinosaurs became birds. Plants and animals struck a deal. Plants made yummy nectar, fruits and seeds, and animals carried pollen and seeds far and wide. Plants and animals began to depend on each other so much that one would die without the other. That's why over a long time, plants began to grow splashy, fragrant flowers, their way of shouting, "Dinner's ready, come and get it!" But in the midst of beauty and light, 65 million years ago, a great darkness was about to descend. It started as any other day. A bird chirped in a magnolia tree. Ferns ate sunlight. A family of mini mammals munched on beetles. Dinosaurs began to stir. High above, a huge meteor, or was it an asteroid? 6 miles wide, hurtled through space, then plunged towards Earth at 40,000 miles per hour. Uh-oh. It slammed into Earth. It punched a hole so deep in her crust that Earth's molten insides erupted all over the planet. Huge rocks and dust exploded into the atmosphere. Tidal waves drowned all life near shore. Forest fires burned across the globe.
Excuse me, Ms. Universe. You seemed uncertain about if it was a meteor or an asteroid. Out in space, it was clearly an asteroid headed for Earth. However, once the asteroid entered the Earth's atmosphere and burned up, it became a meteor. And now, we all know that when it actually hits the Earth, any pieces remaining are called what? Meteorites. Very good.
Thank you for that clarification, Professor Stats. Sunlight couldn't penetrate the sooty veil that blanketed Earth. Without sunlight, plants began to die, and that triggered a cascade of death. Plant eaters fell, then flesh eaters fell. Without animals to carry pollen and seeds, even more plants died. When the fires finally cooled, Earth cooled too, and went into a deep freeze. Almost all life died. Every single land dinosaur sank into the dark night of extinction.
I have just one more note here. Prior to impact, the Earth was already at risk. The planet was already experiencing dramatic climactic swings, perhaps due to a series of massive volcanic eruptions. Many scientists today believe the impact was the tipping point that pushed the system to mass extinction, but not the sole cause.
Well, thank you for that clarification, Professor Stats. But more importantly, who could carry my story forward now? Could I depend on those few scraggly birds still flitting about? Or those scrubby mini mammals huddling together for warmth? There was Earth once again, smack in the middle of another disaster. What would happen to Earth's dragonflies, her flying beetles? How would you ever be born? Earth had been through so many poisonings and poundings. But Earth's imagination wouldn't quit. Bats, woolly mammoths, dolphins, and those remarkable humans will appear. Human mammals will stand up, could cook food over fires, dig for dinosaur bones, and tell great fairy tales. And it will all happen only over 65 million years. That's just a tiny sliver of Earth's entire story, less than 2%, if you want to get mathematical about it, Professor Stats. But that story will have to wait for another day. Until then, never forget that you are part of me, the universe, and I am part of you. And sing in celebration together, Blue Boat Home, number 1064 in the teal hymnal. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. give thanks to the waves upholding me. Hail the great winds urging me.